Hello, YouTube and Facebook friends, people on the internet. This is Blind Justice, and wanted to do a video that incorporates an audio clip from Wednesday night, just a few nights ago. Today's Saturday evening, but Wednesday night just prior to the City Council meeting here in Aberdeen, Washington, they had a public safety committee meeting with the council members. And so I was in there for that meeting because the two ordinances that we've been protesting this week came out of that committee. And so the first clip that we have from that meeting is at the very end. All the clips are from the very end of the meeting when they opened it up to public comment and I had questions, right? So at the beginning, I'm asking a question to the committee. I think I've tried to ask, is this the Public Safety Committee, to try to verify for the recorder. Unfortunately, I didn't get the committee to say their names, exactly who they are, but there's a few people that you'll hear on the recording. You'll hear me ask my question, and then I think the first person to answer is the committee chair, which is John Smith. I think he's a council member. And then we have as part of his answer, I have a follow-up question, and then I believe the vice chair is Alice Phelps, and I think that was her who spoke, who tries to answer with the follow-up. But we'll go through it here, so we're gonna go ahead and play it.
Anyone else? Other council members or public?
Yeah, just a question on these ordinances on the agenda tonight. I'm just curious, like somebody from the Public Safety Committee?
Yes.
Right. If someone from the Public Safety can articulate why these ordinances fall under the public safety, because they're explicitly talking about sitting and laying on the sidewalk and soliciting. Like, how is that public safety?
I'll give you my opinion.
Okay.
The police, an issue of that, or the enforcement of that ordinance is going to involve the police, and that's why it's under public safety.
Right, but isn't that the case with any ordinance? Okay, so the question I had was, why do the ordinances fall under public safety when they're just covering sitting and laying down on sidewalks and soliciting? And then John Smith, the chair, took a stab at it, and he says, well, it's a public safety issue. Sitting and laying down on the sidewalks is a public safety concern because the police will be called out to enforce it. Okay, and same thing with the soliciting. Soliciting is a public safety concern because the police will be called out to enforce it. Now, I happen to agree with John here, right? Because according to his answer, there is no public safety concern with sitting or laying on the street or on the sidewalk. There is no public safety concern for soliciting. It's only when somebody calls the police to use force to remove somebody or threaten somebody with weapons or kidnapping them, when it becomes a public safety issue. All right, so we'll play the rest of the clip.
So if an ordinance, whether it's how you do your water, how you mow your lawn, like this, the enforcement of any ordinance is going to involve the police. So,
Well, not necessarily. Anyone.
Could be a code violation.
Yeah, we've got Public Works, which is for, like what you were just saying, water and stuff. We've got finance, so anything that revolves financially goes to that committee. So this one would fall closest under public safety.
okay.
Because if we were to take it to Public Works, they'd be going, well, we're Public Works. We're not doing anything with, paving the street or fixing a sidewalk or. So that's why it kind of, in my opinion, that's why.
Okay, so I came back with a second question. Well, if this isn't a safety concern until police are called out for enforcement, then isn't that the same thing with all the ordinances in the Aberdeen Municipal Code? And then I believe it's Alice Phelps is the vice chair. I think that's her. Again, she didn't ever really give a name, so we're just going off of what the City Council website says is the chair, and I think she was the only other lady who spoke in the meeting. So, right, any other ordinance is going to be enforced by the police. And so, well, not necessarily, because if it's a code violation, then there's a process here, right, where you get whoever's department writes the letter to the quote violator. Hey, you need to cut your shrubs back, or your your stuff's hanging over the sidewalk. Your shrubs are hanging over the sidewalk. Cut them back, or your lawn's too big, or your whatever happens to be against one of these codes. There's a process where they give a notice to the individual, and then the individual has a certain amount of time to correct the notice or correct the deficiency or whatever that's in the notice. But if they don't, then it escalates, right? Then they get another notice, or eventually the escalation goes to law enforcement, right? Or it's a citation or whatever. Somebody has to go out and issue a ticket or whatnot. So eventually, any breakings of the code violations can escalate to law enforcement involvement, which was my retort, right? Wouldn't involve law enforcement for all the ordinances. So in which case, they're just kind of makes their comment irrelevant of why sitting or lying on the sidewalk and soliciting is a public safety issue, right? Because if their whole argument is it involves enforcement by the police, well, that's the same thing with anything that they try to enforce. Any ordinance that's going to need enforcement, eventually, if it escalates enough, will be law enforcement. And then it becomes a public safety issue because you have people with guns going to order somebody else to do something, right? That they obviously didn't want to do, or did want to do, and somebody says you can't. So that's that clip, and then we've got a couple more clips coming up.